Hey everybody, this is Eli. I'm here, obviously not streaming. This is a recorded video. I'm having internet issues, but I wanted to get the channel back online since I hadn't streamed in a while because of said internet issues. And so I thought it would be best if I just started kind of recording leagues. And normally I'm aiming to play these leagues live, but I did just do pretty well in this last league and had some interesting games. So I thought I would uh, go over that league as a review for my first one, and then in the future, um, I'm gonna do live commentary of games as I play them. They won't be review style. So I hope you enjoy. First things first, we should talk about the deck list a little bit, and this is all maybe a little bit moot in the short term because, or in the long term, because with Aether Drift spoilers coming out, we've already got a relevant goblin uh, that looks pretty exciting. I'll probably talk about that in a different video. Um, and then also Dropkick Bomber comes out on Magic Online tomorrow. So that will change the deck list a little bit. I'm hoping to add one of those somewhere here. Um, but this deck list, I've basically adjusted my Eternal Weekend list a little bit. So Pashik Mons isn't here. I've cut a Battlecry Goblin and one Ancient Tomb. And then the sideboard's changed quite a lot. So notably, we've got two Boggart Trawlers, two Ancient Tombs instead of a 3-1 split. We've got a Mog Fanatic. We love Mog Fanatic. Everybody loves Mog Fanatic. We've got a Sting Scourger. And then in the sideboard, we've got a mix of stuff. Let's talk about the main deck changes. The motivation for these is really the return of Delver and DRC, and that motivates basically all of these changes. Come to think of it, Boggart Trawler is great against DRC and slowing down Murktide Regent or keep preventing it from being cast in the first place. Ancient Tomb can be quite a liability against Delver, so having still 24 lands, but this one does bolt you once, but the Ancient Tomb deals like 6 to you, and that's really bad. We've got Monk Fanatic. I really wanted a 1-mana removal spell for turn 1 DRC or turn 1 Delver because I felt like I was dying pretty often on the draw, especially in game 1. If they just had like a turn 1 DRC plus Bobble and then it's Delirious by turn 2, but then if you just snipe it on turn 1, then they're out of threats and they can kind of fumble for like a turn or two while they look for another threat, and then that gives you time to develop. Sting Scourger for Murktide, and I played against lands a couple of times, and I wanted to kind of keep up the ways to push Lucky through a blocker. So we've got 6 ways to handle more sizable blockers than Fnatic can kill some blockers, but not all of them. The other thing about Mog Fnatic is it is nice against Nomads on Core and like kind of Cephala Breakfast in general. Nadu decks in general. In the sideboard, there's been a big rise in Echo decks, as I've kind of talked about before. I think I talked about that last stream. We've got Leyline of the Void and Grafdigger's Cage, which have been great lately. We've got one Chalice of the Void, so I actually had 2 Chalices, and then I was like, I'm actually beating combo more than necessary. I'm actually okay having not a very good combo matchup, and I kept beating like Storm and stuff, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to cut my second Chalice, and I added a Molten Collapse. I wanted to test out Molten Collapse, because back when I was testing Fatal Push during the Frog era, I actually liked Molten Collapse like the most out of the removal spells I tried, because the 2-for-1 potential is really nice. It's really good against Tameo. It's really good against Moonstompy, because it's like kill your Fable guy plus your Chromox, and then they're like really stuck on mana. The problem is it's not really castable, so I don't think this should actually be in this deck. We've got 11 black sources, 2 of them are tutorable, so like, yeah, it's not it's not uncastable, but it's not like reliable. And there's also no basic swamp, so you can get wasted off of it. So normally, I think you could just play Dismember in this slot. You could play. What I actually want to do is I'm actually going to just cut this for a second Disruptor Flute, because I've decided that the One Ring is basically the way I lose against Stompy, and I really hate losing to the One Ring. So I'm gonna just play 2 flutes and shut them down hardcore. Plus 2 flute is just kind of nice double duty against Doomsday, Show and Tell, Karn decks, Painter, whole bunch of stuff. Flute's very versatile. I like that card a lot. All right, let's get into the games. Okay, we're here with game 1. I won the die roll. I've got a great hand, so this hand's really nice just because it's like Cavern Lackey, Tomb, Matron. So if it's an uninteractive, if they don't interact the Lackey, then I get a Muxus. If they do, I can play a Seer Slicer, or I'd probably go Tomb, Matron anyway, and then get Bombardiers, and then go for like Wasteland plus Bombardiers on turn 3. So they go Spirit Guide, Ancient Tomb, Bombardiers, hold back on blocks. So that's kind of funny. So that tells you a couple things about their hand. They obviously don't have a Chrome Mox. They obviously don't have a Fable. They don't have a Fury. Now, this is sort of an interesting choice of, do you Wasteland the Ancient Tomb? Something that they could do next turn is cast the One Ring, if they're like just a bunch of soul lands. But, you know, when they lead on Ancient Tomb, I'm always kind of tempted to let them have the Ancient Tomb, because the damage can really, really add up. But I decided to keep progressing my board here, because they obviously don't have the Fury now. And so if they do manage to activate their Bombardiers next turn and kill my Lackey, then that means that my Bombardiers, unless they top deck Fury specifically. So, okay, there's even more to it, actually. So if they do draw Fury, first of all, they spend 2 cards, they kill these 2, but they have to do a pre-combat, because if they post-combat, if they just attack, I probably just double block. And then there's nothing, their Fury doesn't have anything to do. It's kind of bad for them. So they play a Karn, just get a Tormod's Crypt, and then blow up my Lackey. I consider double blocking there, but then the Karn's at 3. So now I'm in a really good spot, because now I just kill the Karn, kill the Bombardiers, Wasteland their Ancient Tomb. And now they're like, so they drew a Fury for turn, play tapped land, pitch Caves of Chaos Adventure. Decide to go for the Ringleader there. And the choice there, you know, there is an interesting double Seer Slicer line available there. But I wanted to, it's either Seer Slicer, double Seer Slicer, you could Matron for another Bombardiers, but basically my thinking was, I just want a removal spell. I don't really care what kind of removal spell it is. And so Ringleader 4 looks at Munitions Expert or Bombardiers, or Boggart Trawler to hit land 5, and then Matron can get Munitions Expert. I was like, those are really good odds, so I'll just play the Ringleader since it's more mana efficient, plus I get in 2 damage. So they're at 3rd Ancient Tomb, but now they're just like literally dead. Because now you hit them to 2. 2 Ancient Tombs are offline, I Wasteland the red source, and they're dead, plus play Lackey. So really smooth first game for me. Though worth saying, a lot of it is because I was on the play. This hand, so all right, so against Moon Stompy, I cut Mog Fanatic, doesn't do anything. A Boggart, a Skirk Prospector, and Stink Scourger, and I brought in 2 Pyrokinesis, the Trash Master. Oh, I also shaved a Vial. Normally Vial's really good against Moon Stompy, but since I saw Karn, I don't really want to draw multiple Vials. Maybe that's wrong. Could definitely see that being wrong. Because, like, If this hand had a vial in it, it'd be pretty good. But regardless, maybe I have to map that out a little better. So Trashmaster, 2 Pyrokinesis, and a Molten Collapse for those 4 cards. Or 5 cards. Disruptor Flute, of course. So my opponent kept 7. This hand's kind of borderline. I don't like that my turn 2 play is Munitions Expert that doesn't kill anything, and then, or like a naked broadside. I do get to Surveil on turn 1, but I decide to mulligan. I think it's kind of close, though. So I keep this 6, which has a flute, which I think is really important, and I have 2 experts. I think I put back the Sear Slicer. Yeah. So the Ancient Tomb pass. I draw a Skirk, which is a really good draw. The reason I put back the Sear Slicer is just because instant speed creatures are so important in this matchup. So I play Karn. And this is interesting. They Fury me. So that's them. I guess that's them respecting Munitions Expert. Because I think the opponent plays this a little strangely. So they Fury, kill the Skirk, and then they uptick the Karn. I feel like if you're going to Fury solo Prospector, you're supposed to downtick. Because otherwise, like, what's the point? So now the issue that I start to run into is not having a 3rd land. Also, they play the One Ring. So, granted, they're taking a ton of damage off of Ancient Tomb. But draw a 6-drop, just what you wanted, right? Petal, yeah, and they show Petal, so like this deck is like really all in. So I think I probably should board in Chalice to put it on 0 in game 3. So here I'm just like, okay, I need to draw a Pyrokinesis or a 3rd land would be ideal. Here, Vial, like probably the worst draw in the deck here. So I have to take the trade here because otherwise this becomes huge. Start strong cards and is unkillable. Petal, more One Rings, Pyrogoyf. I'm basically dead. Yeah, I'd never draw a 3rd land. So it kept a 2-lander on the draw and never drew a 3rd land. That's fine. I think... I mean, this is like a good, if I had to second flute and I could have fluted the One Ring, then they would have gotten stuck. They would have had no cards in hand probably by this stage. There's a chance. This is like sort of a premature concession because their hand could be bad. And, if they tap the One Ring and then I draw a land and then I play Matron and get Bombardiers and then Bombardiers could kill them. I think I was a little frustrated by keeping a 2-lander and it's turn 6. So. All right, game 3 here. I think I did board in the Chalice. Yeah, I did. And I trimmed a Sear Slicer. Sear Slicer, this is like the one matchup where I miss Mogwai Marshal compared to Sear Slicer, because the problem is, and I think this problem will fade away a little bit after we get Dropkick in the deck, where it's just like Sear Slicer exposes you to Fury quite badly, because it encourages you to overplay into Wraths. So I do miss Mog for that reason, where like you could play a Mogwai Marshal and more or less guarantee that you'll untap with something in play, meaning that they can't stop you from having Bombardier's Fuel, is really the key thing. So they have turn 1 Fable plus Fury, which is kind of the nuts, honestly. Turn 1 Fable in this deck. I played a League of this deck last night, and Turn 1 Fable is like by far the best thing the deck does. So we play our sad Seer Slicer. Play Karn, or they discard Karn. They keep everything else. Now they play a One Ring. But now all right, so they don't have 2 cards and they have 1 mana. And I draw Bombardiers. And okay, so I decide not to play my Bombardiers here because I want instant speed removal. Because if they go Soul Land Bombardiers, I want to be able to kill that. It's kind of similar to Bowmaster's Mirrors. Is you want to play Bombardiers second, just like you want to play Bowmasters second, and that's exactly what happens here. Now this does give them a treasure token, but then we get to kill that, so we kind of get a 2-for-1, kind of a 1.5-for-1, and obviously, you know, this does reduce my clock, but getting rid of that treasure maker is really important, I think. So we are pretty exposed to Fury here, but there's another Karn into another One Ring, so they just had 8 mana. But none of that really affected the board in any way. And they got they got the One Ring with Karn, right? Land is weirdly not terrible here because it lets me surveil. So they have protection, so just do that. And then I pop their Chromox so they don't have double red. So, and even if that itself doesn't matter that much, if it's forcing them to play out another Chromox, that means 1 less card in their hand. If they want to hard cast Fury to kill like this and this, it forces them to maybe use their Ancient Tomb a bit more. It prevents them from like hard cast Shadow Skull Smashing for like a whole like 6. That would be bad. Some more Ancient Tombs. The 3rd One Ring. Flute. I got Muxus on top, and I'm like, okay, sick. Now, I think I make a mistake here because this game is sort of locked up. I don't really need to take risks. I think what I should have done is just attack and play my land and pass, because the risk here is Fiery Confluence. Blow up everything. And I can't get damage on this turn. So I'm basically trying to hit a 1 of Sling Gang. Or like a... Now, the thing is, if I hit a Matron, then I want to find that card. And I hit an Insane Muxus here, so like I have 6 cards in my hand. That's like honestly such a ludicrous Muxus. So it's a 1, 2, 3, 4 hit Muxus, one of which is a 4-hit Ringleader. So draw 6. So, I mean, no need for drama here. They Fiery Confluence me plus Fury the Muxus, and then I play. Well, there's. I'll let you find lethal. There's about 500 ways to get lethal here. I guess the fact that Fiery Confluence doesn't kill Muxus is a good reason to actually cast the Muxus, because then they need red source, Confluence, red card, Fury. Or I guess they could have Bombardiers throw this after the Trash Master's dead. Strictly speaking, I should do this in a way that doesn't lose to Spirit Guide Dead Gone. I guess that doesn't lose to Spirit Guide Dead Gone, because then they die in their upkeep. Okay, I did it right. It's fine. All right, let's see you for round 2. All right, we're here for round 2. On the draw here against Samus SSP. Samus SSP used to be a Goblins player. I've also seen them on Painter in the past. So I kept this hand because I was like, creature deck, most likely. It's a 1-lander on the draw, which I don't like, but Pyrokinesis helps break serve. And then we've got 3 accelerants and generally works well together. And then we get Mox Savannah Sphere Resistance. And I'm like, oh god, please draw a land in 2 turns. But I draw a Wasteland, so that's kind of sick. So now I get to go Wasteland pass. And then they're like not really incentivized. Like if they go like Wasteland my Wasteland, and then I go Wasteland your Savannah, then you're stuck under your own sphere. I draw a basic, which is awesome. So now I get to cast this file. Now the sphere doesn't do anything. Like crop rotation for Ancient Tomb, which is crazy. Then Wasteland my Wasteland. So this card, I keep running into this land stack over and over again. I don't get it, really. Those cards neat. So 3 mana, 3/3 reach. Whenever you commit a crime, look at the top 5 cards of your library. You may put a land card from among them onto the battlefield tapped. Put the rest in the bottom random order. Trigger once per turn. And so targeting anything your opponent controls or is in their graveyard is a crime. So this card is actually very good with Ghost Vacuum because you just eat a card in their graveyard and get your trigger every turn. I make a pretty big error here, I think. I play out my land. I think that was really stupid of me with the battle cry in my hand. I didn't think my whole turn through. So Lackey, I don't really need double Lackey this game with how my hand looks. So I just clear that and pass. But I absolutely shouldn't have played this land. That was like kind of a bad error. But it's looking like this Lackey is going to get in here. I get pretty lucky to draw Ancient Tomb. So Battlecry, activate. So if I had saved my Cavern, I could just play the Cavern this turn. Crop rotation for Maze is like annoying, but actually fine because all I'd be putting in would be Skirk Prospector. So in a way, it's like actually good for me. So I've got a Saga token that's notably a 3/3. And I draw a Wasteland, which is awesome. And I decide, so the thing I don't want to deal with is, don't really feel like dealing with Tabernacle. And so I don't want this to be able to get Expedition Map. I could hit the Ancient Tomb, but the Ancient Tomb's doing them a lot of damage. So now I get to Bombardiers, activate to get the Pack Tactics, and then I decide I don't need this vial anymore. I have my stuff on board is enough to win the game. I don't need to cast anything else. Yeah, kind of impossible for my opponent to get out of that situation, I think. All right, game 2. Pyrokinesis being good against lands was pretty funny. So sideboarding, I cut 3 Munitions Experts. I leave in 1 because of the Lookout. Cut Mog Fanatic, cut 3 Goblin Ringleaders. I bring in Ley Lines, Flute, Trashmaster, the Molten Collapse for Moxes and Needles and stuff like that. And Magus, right? This hand's passable. I think I keep it. This Raucous Theater being here kind of sucks. But 2 basics is really nice. And no acceleration for my opponent's also nice. Ley on the Void, not so nice. Ley Lion is not my preferred draw there. So try to make a dude and I get plowed. This is fine though. Like opponent's trying to make Lackey irrelevant via Maze. The fact that they're doing this though kind of says that there's a second plow because that's a really risky move to make if I have a Wasteland for the Maze. And this is the first like real tricky decision is I don't have an answer to this saga, so I kind of want to play this theater to try to dig for one, but then that would interrupt my sequencing. I would like to go Seer Slicer plus Lackey, but I decided that Lackey's not that relevant, right? Because I don't have. I also want to get a Black Source in play in case I need to bog next turn. My opponent plays like a Loam, and then I decide, hold on, Lackey is actually better than Seer Slicer here, right? Even though it's less mana efficient. Because like, if I were to draw a Wasteland, I could potentially get a Lackey connection in. That wouldn't be that valuable, so maybe not worth thinking about. So I decide, okay, this construct, I can answer one construct with the Sting Scourger. The initial construct, I'm just gonna have to take the trade. Plus, now I get my Seer Slicer, and I think I make an error here. I think I needed to save this bog. You know what I actually should have done here? I should have cast Leyline of the Void. I should have cast Leyline because I cast Boggart here to clear this stuff, but I should have made sure that this saga could not come back. I should have cast Leyline. This is better pressure-wise, but my pressure is going to get stuck a little bit between, well, the construct token I can handle, the maze, you know. And I play my Seer Slicer. Moto's just going slow for a second here. And I crop for Tabernacle, waste me, and then play Loam. And the game's basically over from there. So, yeah, hard casting Leyline of the Void would have prevented this saga and the like the Loam could get back Verdant Catacombs, Bojuka Bog. Neither of those matter. I should have just prevented the Loam from picking the saga back up. Because then we can still play the game here. I would have an additional land, because the Boggart Trawler would be a land, not a spell. Just be in a much, much better position. I don't know if I'd win drawing Lackey either way, but it's possible. Definitely possible. All right. Game 3 here. I don't think I changed my sideboarding at all. Doesn't look like it. So this hand kind of doesn't do anything. Just mulligan that. And then I got this. This is honestly like the nuts against lands. I have a Lackey to beat your plow, a Wasteland, and then another Lackey, and then opponent has Maze, and then I'm like, okay, how about second Wasteland? So if my opponent had crop rotation for another Maze, then we'd be in trouble. And then it's a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 hit Muxus that also finds a Matron, so I can find Skir Prospector, Seer Slicer triggers, so I can pay for. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 creatures. If there were a Tabernacle, then I could pay for 5 of them. So I pay for this. So just for demonstration purposes, opponent plays a Tabernacle. Triggers on the stack. You sacrifice, or you pay for. Let's say you pay for a Muxus with Mountain, and then you sacrifice lackey, matron, token, sear slicer, and then you keep bombardiers, boggart, bombardiers, skirk. Does that math add up? So 1, 2, 3, 4 to keep. 1, 2, 3, 4, yeah. And then this. And then they're dead by a lot. Just like a quadrillion damage there. All right. So that was round 2. Let's go to round 3. All right, here's round 3, everybody. On the draw again. I don't quite remember what this matchup was. My opponent's on the play. They mulled a 6. I keep this pretty solid. 7. Underground Sea, go. Oh. This is a very, very funny. This is a very funny game. Cavern Lackey goes. I'm like, okay. All right, my opponent didn't cast Entomb, so it's either Storm or Doomsday, or they're going to Bowmaster me. They thought seize me, take Matron, pass. I'm like, all right. Still thinking Doomsday, if that's the case. Though, maybe they should have taken the Bombardiers then. So I want to maximize damage, not value. So I play Battlecry instead of Sear Slicer. When it goes Brainstorm, pass. So that's like the second Brainstorm is Panic. I draw a 3rd land. So now I can go Cavern out the Fanatic, activate Battlecry. And I can basically put my opponent in checkmate where they can't cast a Doomsday. Because this is, well, then they go 3rd Brainstorm. The 3rd Brainstorm out of turn made me laugh really, really hard. But yeah, I assume my opponent's on Doomsday here, and you can put them stone dead by going Bombardiers, sacrifice the Sear Slicer, put them to 2, and then Mog Fanatic is just on the table so that if they cast... Well, really, you can just Mog Fanatic them in response to Doomsday, and then they die as soon as it resolves. Or you can just wait till it resolves and then shoot them for 1. Probably should do it immediately, just on the off chance they have a Stifle. That's probably strictly correct. All right, game 2. So I sided for Doomsday. So Experts out, Pyroblasts in, trimmed 1 vial, didn't board in Trashmaster. So it's Reb, Flute, Chalice, Mindbreak Trap, that sort of stuff. And I have this kind of mediocre 7. Like, these 2 cards are really good in the matchup, and the Wasteland's really good. So it's like a really good, like, 5. Like, I have 2 more lands than I need, but I have a mana sink, so, like, I actually keep it, which is sort of disrespectful, to be honest. But given that my opponent... I draw another land. So we start fetching to thin. Oh, no. I should have done that. Get dazed. So they get rid of... So they top Undercity Sewer. They daze picking up Undercity Sewers after topping something with it. And then they replay the Undercity Sewers and then mill Brainstorm. So I think that means that their hand is cantrip flooded. So, and I draw a vial, so I'm like, okay, this just makes sense now to just use the Wasteland. And then they Brainstorm for a land and whiff. And then I draw Cavern. There's a little bit of debate of if you're supposed to, if like you don't draw... If you don't draw a Cavern there, I think you're probably supposed to hold on to the Battlecry because they could pretty easily Force of Will it. And you can just file it in next turn. I draw a Pyroblast. Kind of fine, I guess. Prevents them from 1 turn killing you all of a sudden. Draw Bombardiers, probably my best draw. And then I put you to 3. yeah, but they got Brainstorm locked. Not too much to say there. Let's go to round 4. All right, round 4 is against Easy Money Marksman. Easy Money Marksman is one of the better Italian players, has been the trophy leader before. I forget his name, but very strong player. Tends to play Reanimator, like blue-black or blue-black tempo stuff. So that's sort of what I presumed when queuing. So on the draw, don't like that hand. This hand I think is like a super reluctant keep, and then my decision to bottom. I think I bottom the Wasteland because against these blue-black decks, you don't really want to Wasteland them. If it's Reanimator, I want the Boggart in case I draw another land, in which case I want this as a spell. And I don't want to get rid of one of my Bombardiers because I might get Thought Seized, and then I don't have a Bombardiers, and then it could also be Reanimated, and I want to be able to Bombardiers my own Bombardiers. And then it's Oopsal spells, and I die on turn 1. Deal land triple Spirit Guide. But Oopsal spells has really diversified lately, and I think cannot be written off. I think it's actually one of the best decks in the format. And we have to respect the fact that there are many different iterations of the deck. The deck's sort of undergoing a number of transformations. And this one, the fact that there's a main deck Sheoldred kind of tells you that this mono black list is kind of interested in being in doing like the pivot plan more often. There's definitely some sort of mid-rangey, or not even mid-range, like aggro beats strategy embedded in this deck that also just has, the Oops package. And they've cut down on Narc Amoebas as much as possible to just play more creatures that attack. Now this hand, I know Mono Black does not have great answers to Leyline of the Void, so they're going to go like a Belcher sideboard plan, or they can do I'm blanking on the name of it. It's 1 in a black sorcery, destroy target creature or enchantment, and then you lose life equal to the mana cost. Can't remember the name. That's probably their Leyline answer. So I'm obviously really happy with this hand, just in general. And it's better than it appears. So it's a 7 with a Leyline and a turn 2 Bombardiers, which is baseline very good. Lead on Ancient Tomb, make my opponent think about what I might have, like a Flute or something. This hand, this is extremely funny to me. All right, so Dark Ritual. I'm like, oh shit, I'm dead to Belcher. Feed the Swarm is the card I'm thinking of, by the way. How about Barrogoyf into Poxwalkers? The 0/1 Barrogoyf. And then Pyrokinesis is just... Now, you gotta be careful there. Make sure you put 2 damage on that Barrogoyf. Otherwise, it will not die. Don't lose the old Goyf check. State-based effects, guys. Gotta stay aware. So my opponent spent a lot of resources on doing that, right? 2 Dark Rituals, but I'm not that scared of much, to be honest. And then this Bowmasters comes out of absolutely nowhere. I decided to let that trade happen. I think Trashmaster, like just trading it off and then using Matron to Trashmaster the Chromox and then get something else seems better for me. And I draw a Chalice. Okay, Mana Denial, fully in full swing, I should say. So opponent scoops to the Matron, but again, Shadow the Chromox, play Chalice on 0, get probably just get another Bombardiers at this point. Could get Sling Gang. Kind of doesn't really matter. All right, game 3. So now my opponent's interested in this beatdown plan, but they also might have shifted back into plan A, which is scary. Now, 2 Pyrokinesis is interesting, but the fact that this hand doesn't develop at all makes me not like it. So Multi 6. This hand isn't really good either. So I'm looking for Leyline, really. Leyline or Cage. And I'm like, okay, 5. I've got a 5 with a Chalice and a Pyrokinesis. Pyrokinesis is still going to be one of my better cards here. I have a Wasteland, so I think I decide to keep this 5 rather than go to 4. Because if I go to 4, I do genuinely risk dying to the beatdown plan. So opponent goes, yeah, Mox, get rid of Poxwalker's Thoughtseize, pass, no land drop. I think the choice of Chalice on 0 versus Chalice on 1 is really interesting. The problem with Chalice on 1 is that I have a Cage I would really like to draw, and I have 1-drops I would really like to draw. And I'm passing a turn. Now, I can pretty much read that my opponent doesn't have any other 0-mana spells because they Thoughtseized me, saw the Chalice, and didn't take it. So Chalice on 0 probably isn't going to be effective, but my opponent does have 3 more Chrome Moxes and 4 Lotus Petals in their deck that they could easily draw for turn. I also don't know, well, if they're doing the Belcher plan, which they probably aren't. There's only so many pivots you can put in your deck. I think I sit on it for a while, and then I decide, okay, let's just play the Chalice. I'm probably not playing Chalice on 1 next turn. Hopefully I just draw something. I do draw a 1-drop, so. And rather than save that for Pyrokinesis, I'm basically trying to set myself up to win if I draw a Matron or a Moxus. I'm going to go Spirit Guide, Poxwalker, which is really good for me. And then Moto. Yeah, okay. And then I decided to take the trade there because I'm like, well, I think this can be my win condition. I don't need to rely on the Lackey. Just get Poxwalker out of here. Dark Ritual, Sheoldred. All right, so opponent. No. It's all Spirit Guides off this 1 Chrome Mox. But now we're in this sort of funny spot where old Matron made it easy, but now I can just, so what I was going to do was attack, and then if they block, Pyrokinesis the Sheoldred. So Sheoldred is sort of just like a weird enchantment right now because it can't really attack or block. But they have so few resources that I was like, wait, I can just like sit on this and actually let the Bombardiers get into play. The only downside would be if my opponent drew Thoughtseize specifically, and then if they draw Thoughtseize and then I don't draw a red card for like 2 turns, then we're maybe in trouble. But I believe the only way I could really lose this game would be if my opponent drew like Ritual, Land, Spy. And they've already used 1 Ritual. So, did draw a red card, so now this is just more than enough. So next turn is attack for 6, sack for 2. So they're dead on 2 turns. All right. Now, round 5. So this is against Pikachu. Now, Pikachu is quite a good player. Got into the 2023 showcase. I am merely a 2022 showcase gamer. Feels so long ago now. But I'm crucially on the play. My opponent very often plays Delver, and that was sort of my basic guess. This is a solid 1-2-3 hand. We got a Wasteland, we got a Boggart. Boggart's really nice against Delver. Opponent mulligans to 6. I like my position. I consider leading on Badlands so that I might be able to surveil with this later. But I decided I don't really want to be Wastelanded. I draw another fetch land, so it's fine. Now this really surprised me. This block. So this block says to me there's another DRC coming, and or my opponent's really interested in Delirium. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to take my Seer Slicer value while I can. And I'm playing the Badlands there because I want to be able to Wasteland if I draw Expert. I draw second Bombardiers. My opponent also did not daze me. So I jam. Opponent's gone down to one card. So that mulligan really brutal for them. So they don't flip the Delver, and they have a Bauble. And again, so this is an important thing. Where tracking your opponent's hand is really, really important. We know with almost absolute certainty my opponent does not have a daze because they force of willed, pitching Ponder, drew for turn, and did not reveal a daze of the Delver. So it's basically guaranteed that there's no daze. Now the question is, what do I want to do about that? I think what I maybe should have done is Wasteland in my draw step, Wasteland the Valk, and then Bombardiers the Delver using the Goblin token. But the upside of taking this other line is I can still do that again next turn because my opponent might just have a land in hand. There's actually a pretty good shot. My opponent has a land or a Murktide Regent. Is basically the only thing it could be, or a Bowmasters. So I decide I want to just get the vial down, because I think this is going to be my lightning bolt for the broadside. I actually want to keep my 1/1 token, and this slows down Murktide if Murktide is one of the cards in their hand. So they do flip to Ponder, and then they have a DRC. So now things. There's 4 cards in the graveyard already. I draw another Wasteland, which is insane. So now I get to go Wasteland you in my draw step. Play a land. You can't daze me, because it could have found a daze off the Ponder. Attack. Throw Vial at the DRC. Wasteland your Valk. And now you're just stuck. Because now you're taking 6. Next turn, I get to kill the Delver, hit you for 5. And it's just like super far ahead. So at this point, I was pretty nervous because I haven't 5-0'd it in a little bit. So sideboard against Delver, I kind of keep changing up my feelings. Against Grixis Delver, I like Chalice a lot less than against Rug because they have Bowmasters as non-bolt removal. They also tend to have Molten Collapse in their deck, which is really good against Chalice. They also tend to be a little bit more aggressive than Rug, so they have more creatures than Rug because of Bowmasters, so Pyrokinesis is better. So I have 2 Pyrokinesis, 3 Rebs, and the Molten Collapse are what I bordered in. So I cut 2 Muxus, 1 Ringleader because I'm on the draw, and 2 Skirks. I don't love cutting both Skirks because of Bowmasters. Maybe you keep 1 Skirk in and you like trim a Lackey or something. But generally, I've been finding Skirk is not good against Delver as it stands. And this hand's great. I was really happy with this hand. Double Vial is exactly what we want. So turn 1 DRC is what you don't want. You get dazed. I'm like, okay, sad. And no Delirium, no land. So I'm like, please draw a Wasteland. I clicked on that as if I'm still playing. So I decide. So I play my Vial here. And I decide not to play. So my opponent pondered, didn't hit a land drop. Or no, they did. That is from the days. So I'm like, okay, so my opponent could play Molten Collapse next turn, and that's why I don't play the Lackey. Because I don't want to get 2 for 1. And that's actually exactly what happens. which sucks. Like, not being able to stick either vial is really bad for me. And I think that Wasteland was maybe wrong. Okay, but it does pay off. And I think here I make a pretty big mistake. In my brain, I this was again me getting nervous. In my brain, I was like, oh, I need to get the Sting Scourger to move the get the DRC out of play. But in fact, it's already tapped. So what I should have done is I should have matroned for expert and then just experted the DRC. Kill it permanently. Save the Sting Scourger for Murktide. Now this does mean I get to get the Boggart. But this would be dead. And then I could Sting Scourger the Delver. His opponent goes Force, Pitch, Force. Another DRC. I draw Ancient Tomb, and now I can kill one of the guys, and they block, or they don't block, which is a bold. That's a bold no block, but they're taking the bet that if Delver flips, I just die, and it flips the bolt anyway, so I'd have been dead. But yeah, I think the kind of brain fart on not needing to actually Sting Scourge right there cost me the game, because I could have killed the DRC rather than bounced it. And if I kill that DRC, did my opponent surveil? Put it on top. So it didn't really affect that much. But still, a DRC would have died. Sting Scourger would have gotten Force of Willed. And then I might have still died to Flip Bolt. Not entirely sure, actually. But I think regardless of outcome, it was an error. So Molten Collapse got me pretty good. Even I avoided the 2-for-1, but still losing both my vials to Daze plus Collapse is always rough when there's a turn 1 DRC. So that's like a really good example of like a game where if I just was able to go like Cavern Mog Fanatic, kill the DRC, it would have taken so much pressure off me. Pyrokinesis also would have been good. Like kill your Delver plus DRC. All right. I decided my opponent's playing pretty aggressively. And so I continued with -1 Ringleader, even though I generally don't like doing that against Delver. And then I cut an Ancient Tomb? Sometimes I've been cutting an Ancient Tomb. I didn't do it. Okay. This hand's really solid though. It's a little weak. Okay, so this is actually one of these really interesting like Lackey or Vial decisions. Okay. There's like so many things to consider here. The upside of turn 1 Lackey is that it's going to trade with, it's either going to trade with a Bolt, and it's going to force them to do something on turn 1 other than cantrip, which is often quite relevant. The other thing is that if they don't have an immediate answer for it, they might be forced to expend a Force of Will on it, at which point your Vial can stick on turn 2, plus you wasteland them. If their hand has Bolt and a Force of Will, obviously neither of these cards are going to do their thing. But if you sequence it where Lackey is first, the Bolt can't be on top of their deck, because if they have a Force of Will but no Bolt yet, they are going to Force of Will to Lackey. Whereas if you play a Vial, they're always forcing the Vial, whereas Lackey only eats a Force of Will on turn 1, basically. There's almost no other circumstance where that will happen. The other upside of leading on Lackey here is that you might get to use it a removal spell because this Munitions Expert isn't actually online until turn 3, unless I top deck a Black Source, and it would really have to be Cavern to avoid a Daze. So because of the specific intersection of starting on a basic land, have a Wasteland, and a Vial, I decide to lead on Lackey here. To prevent my opponent from cantripping on turn 1, I might get to trade with a threat. I might pull a Force of Will out of their hand. And if they go Force of Will plus like Ponder, Shuffle, and then you Wasteland them and play your Vial, then you're pretty ahead. Because and if we think about it, and if we assume stuff's going to resolve, and then I go Mountain Vial and it resolves, and then they play like Ponder or DRC, and then I Wasteland them. When my Lackey's coming down on end of turn 2, it's not that likely to connect, and it's possible that a DRC is Delirious by then if they have a Bauble. So the Lackey might not even be able to attack. So even though it's intuitive to want to play the Vial as soon as possible, obviously because it ticks up every turn, and I do have a 1, 2, 3, 4 straight up curve, which is really nice. That doesn't really play. I think it just doesn't play out that way in practice. So it opens you up to some disasters where you go like, okay, turn 1 Vial, they play DRC, Wasteland them, Vial and Lackey, and I'm unable to attack, perhaps, because of a Delirious DRC. Like, I have to go like Expert plus, like trade Expert plus Lackey to trade with the DRC, or it's like I get bolted in response, and then it's a disaster, and then they like Molten Collapse my Vial, and then I have nothing. So like it's easier to get blown out if you lead on the Vial here. This opponent goes Bolt, and I draw Cavern. So Cavern was on top of my deck, so I was like, oh, all right. I guess even more vindicated for leading on Lackey, because if they had a DRC, then I just like kind of win the game, because then I just put in Sling Gang for free. And now I go Vial before Wasteland. I usually Wasteland first, so they don't have the option to Daze to protect their land if they don't have a land. But I'm like, okay, actually, if they do that, if they have only one land and they Daze here, I'm fine just paying for it, and then I get to Matron on the next turn, because then I'm ahead like 2 lands, and I have a resolved Vial. And like, what are they even going to do if this is their only land? They basically have to Ponder on the next turn to find another land. Or if they top deck a land, then they can go like Delver or DRC plus hold a land up, and then I Wasteland them, and then Expert their creature, and then they're still on one land. So I decide. Normally I would just snap off the Wasteland, and not even give them the choice. But I think that choice is actually good for me if they go for that. But this tells you everything, right? And then I draw another basic, which is actually kind of insane. And then they're stuck, and my opponent actually concedes right there, because this is the weakness of Grixis Delver, is that its mana base is not good. Like, my opponent is multiple turns. Like, if your Vial answer is Molten Collapse, you're minimum 2 turns away from casting it, at which point I will have a Vial on 3. Because next turn I'm going to go Matron, get Bombardiers, and then by the time you're casting Molten Collapse, I can Vial in Bombardiers in response to that. And then I have like 3 or 4 creatures on the table, and they're just really far behind. So that's it. That's the 5-0. It was pretty sweet. Now, Molten Collapse showed up once and didn't make me keep a hand or anything like that. I think it's the most prudent thing is just cut it for a Disruptor Flute. Again, that the game against Moonstompy, I was like, I had the flute for the Karn, and then I died to the One Ring. It's like, if I just had 2 flutes, they just like never win. And I think a lot of the decks a lot of the draws I'm struggling against are usually interactable via Disruptor Flute. And I like that I had been losing a good bit to Delver actually with the Eternal Weekend list, and I think the introduction of Sting Scourger and Monk Fanatic have helped pretty significantly. Just that little extra bit of cheap interaction for tempo just really helps. And then the second Boggart Trawler also really helps. Boggart was pretty good in that league, I thought. I'm gonna call it there. So this will be, the first in this kind of series of videos where I'm just recording. I'll be recording more live gameplay in the future. I'll just edit the matches together. I'll cut out the queue time and stuff. So thank you for watching. I hope you enjoy this style for me. And I'm happy to get suggestions if you think that there's some sort of change I should make. I'm going to put a piece on the Patreon about the new cards as we get them. There's the 2-drop, which is really exciting, and presumably other goblins in the set that'll be coming out. So I'll have some thoughts on the Patreon about that. Thank you all for watching again, and see you next time.